I don't quite know how I feel about A Gift for Christmas. This is also called A Gift to Remember. It was released in 2017, directed by Kevin Fair, and stars Ali Liebert as Darcy and Peter Porte as a character I won't name. And there's a reason for that. But if you go onto IMDb, the name is there, so just bear in mind if you want to look at information before you watch it. It might spoil in fact, it'll spoil a big bit of information. So please don't look at the name on IMDb if you watch this. And I think I recommend you watch it. I spent maybe the first two thirds of this not really enjoying it, finding one of the protagonists really boring. And then in the final third, I actually found it to be pretty decent. And I'll discuss with a spoiler warning why that is. But for the moment, this will be spoiler free. Darcy is cycling and this car, I think it was actually a truck, backed out and she swerved and she glanced behind her, and as she did so, she collided with the male potential love interest character. I can't name him because he gets amnesia and he's in hospital, and for a good chunk of this, we don't even know who he is or what his name is, so I don't want to spoil it. So it's a bit awkward to talk about without naming the character, but she ends up looking after his dog called Bailey. And I will refer to him as Bailey's owner going forward to identify him a bit more easily. And she visits Bailey's owner in the hospital, and she does admit straight away that this happened because she crashed into him. And I think you do need to suspend disbelief quite a lot. And I think this is maybe one of the reasons why I was struggling to get on board with this, because it seems very over the top. I feel like he wouldn't be the one who'd have amnesia in this situation because, from what we saw at least, he barely hit the ground. The collision was not that severe. And then when he's in hospital, I feel like a lot of the things there just weren't very realistic. And yeah, I don't expect Christmas rom coms to be a perfect example of reality. Most of the time, they're not. But for me, because I have a deep interest in this kind of thing, in this aspect of medical information, for me, I needed it to be a little bit more realistic. So that's just something worth bearing in mind if, like me, you needed that to be a bit more believable. But once he starts to remember things, it gets a little bit more realistic, I guess, and I guess a little bit more interesting, but not interesting enough for the first two thirds of the film. And I think one of the other reasons for that is Darcy's really boring. No problem with the acting. I think Ali Liebert's brilliant, and there are certainly times when we get to see some raw emotions from that character, but few and far between. She's just a really boring, not very interesting character. And unfortunately, because we don't know that much about Bailey's owner, it's not like he can provide, a great source of fascination either, because we don't know that much about him or who he is or what his motivations are. So it really depended on Darcy to carry that part, and she doesn't do that. Now, one could argue they've made her quite a boring character so that we can focus on Bailey's owner, but at the same time, Bailey's owner isn't always that interesting because we don't know that much about him, so we can't go on this journey with him as much. We need to go on the journey from Darcy's perspective. And she was just boring and not that interesting to journey with. So honestly, the first two thirds were kind of a disappointment. But in the final third, it was okay. I'll get to that in a moment. But with regards to the Christmas aspect, it's not the most festive film. It absolutely is not. But as it progressed, we got a few more Christmas decorations, a little bit of Christmas music. I wasn't really thinking this would be a film that would put me in the Christmas mood based on the narrative anyway, but there's a little bit of Christmas in there. Enough that they can call it a Christmas film, but not enough that I feel like it could, you know, put you in the Christmas mood if that's what you're trying to watch it for. So, spoilers from now, I will discuss the final third of the film and why I actually found that it picked itself up quite a bit. And I feel like basically all of the good stuff happened in the final third. So big, big spoilers from this point on. And I feel like it was really obvious that Bailey's owner, who I guess I can name now, he's called Aiden. I feel like it was immediately obvious that this was not him. Darcy thought it was a certain person, and just immediately I thought it's not him. Well, I had the suspicion, and then when he started to say things like, "But I love Christmas, there are no decorations," the penny dropped quite early on. But thankfully, they didn't give an answer for why that would be then his house. In honestly, I had thought she'd maybe picked up the wrong set of keys somehow and had gone into the wrong person's house. Or maybe he was doing a job for somebody and had the keys to that property. Maybe he was somebody's personal assistant. So I wasn't quite sure exactly how the keys for this house were there, but I was curious enough to find out. And because we started to get those answers in the final third, I found that it became quite interesting. And by this point, we know a lot more about Aiden, so he becomes a really interesting character. And I was keen to know more about who he was and where he was going in life. And it definitely helped to get more interesting. I will say Darcy remained really boring. I never disliked her. I never had a problem with her. I just found her really dull. And, even in this final third, she gets the career progression she's been wanting. And I just felt nothing. I didn't care. I wasn't pleased for her. I wasn't unhappy or anything, but I was just completely indifferent to her as a character. However, I did ultimately enjoy the film. I've kind of spoiled the ending now, but if for some reason you've watched the first two thirds, or even less, and you gave up, I'd say it's worth going back and finding out more. I've not answered every question. There are still things about Aiden that I was curious about that it went on to provide answers for. So hopefully I haven't completely spoiled everything if you do want to go back and watch it. I'd recommend it, I think, but by no means would I say prioritize it. It's not worth rushing to see, but if you have the time and you feel like it could be your kind of thing, I'd say it's worth watching once, maybe only once, but it had its moments. Ultimately, it's an okay film.